It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Hello there, South Mississippi, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So another day underneath the heat dome today. Like I said earlier on GMM, it's kind of out of the frying pan and into the frying pan, the next pan. Fortunately, we're not going into the oven, so that's the plus today. I don't expect the heat to be much worse than yesterday. And frankly, how can you get much worse than yesterday? Were you out and about on Monday? You might have noticed it was quite hot. In fact, for Gulfport, Biloxi, it was the hottest day of this year so far. We got the numbers to prove it. This is a look at the report from the Gulfport Airport. They clocked a high temperature of 98 degrees at 3:42 yesterday. Technically, I think it was like 97 point something that wound up rounding up to 98. But there you can see that 98 degree, which was only one shy of the record set back in 1982 of 99. So the previous record holder, 99, is still the record holder. It was not challenged, but it was close. We were forecasting 97, by the way. So we were pretty close to the forecast, and we were also pretty close to the record. Today's record is a little bit more difficult to reach. I believe it's 101 degrees. We're not forecasting 101, but we are forecasting 97-ish, so we'll be within 5 degrees of the record that currently stands for today. Now, I love to do this sometimes when we kind of put things into perspective over a long range to kind of give you a general feel of how things have been going. And what I'm showing you is yesterday's high temperature, 98. That was in the afternoon. That's why we often say the afternoon high. Most times, the hottest temperature of the day happens in the afternoon. We also tend to say the morning low because most of the time, the coolest temperature of the day winds up happening in the morning, right before the sun comes up. That was a 78. So we had about a 20-degree range yesterday from the coolest temperature of the morning to the hottest temperature of the afternoon. Well, let's take a look at this, which shows you the last 30 days. And you can see yesterday, right on the very right of this chart, yesterday with that high of 98 and that morning low of 78. And this helps you to put into perspective over the last 30 days. We always talk about a heat wave, and this chart almost perfectly illustrates that wave nature of this heat, because we can see 3 distinct heat waves here. One of them during the middle of July when we saw the heat ramping up. Then we had another heat wave right there into the middle to late part of the month when the heat ramped up right there. And here we are again this time around with the final part of the month and the heat ramping up right here. So that's 3 distinct heat waves during the second half of July, which featured a round of increasing temperatures. Of course, they don't last long. That's what makes them a wave, is because a wave stops. And you see the stopping point of each of them when we drop from 95 to 88. That was, let's see, this is the 14th, so that would be 15, 16. So we had 95 on the 16th, and we dropped to 88 on the 17th. And then over here, if this is the 24th, that's 23rd. So the 23rd we had 97, and then on the 24th we dropped to 88. So there's always a sharp drop at the end of these waves, often brought by some showers and storms. And I think we're about to hit another one of those drops. So even though yesterday was the hottest day of the year so far, today probably will be another similar day because there is a better rain chance, but I don't think it will happen before we hit a high of 97 or 98. But then tomorrow, maybe some of that heat kind of breaks down and we see the end of this 3rd July heat wave in the area. So pretty cool to kind of put that data out there like that in a chart. I'm kind of a weather data geek when it comes to numbers. I love them. Anyway, this morning it's been so beautiful, right? A lot of sunshine, picture perfect morning for any of your Tuesday plans, but it is warming quickly. We fully expect that sweltering heat to give us a big old repeat as we go to the middle of the day. But then later, maybe some thunderstorms begin to develop into the PM hours, and that could actually cause wet roads for the ride home. A quick 8 a.m. check on the temperature map. The thermometer across the entire 6 southernmost counties looks like it's in the 80s, mostly lower to middle 80s. We're going to see 90s in just the next little while. But if you want to talk about the heat index, it already feels like the 90s in most of the area. Feels like 92 degrees near Moss Point, Pascagoula. Feels like 95 degrees at Keesler in Biloxi. Feels like 98 to the north of Back Bay in Biloxi. Feels like 94 at the Gulfport Airport. Feels like 96 Long Beach, 94 in the Kiln, and in Perkinston, 95 near Big Level and Wiggins. So we're already seeing a hot heat index before we are even at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. It wastes no time at all, quickly heating things up. There's a quick peek at the forecast for your Tuesday. You can see that the temperature looks about the same as yesterday, but the difference today is the rain chance, which is expected to be higher. So we can see some of those scattered showers and thunderstorms today. We'll talk a little bit more about those rain chances, but first we want to focus on the dangerous part of the forecast, which is the heat index. If you were watching Waking Up with Wesley yesterday, we fully went into why this stuff is dangerous. It all has to do with how muggy the air is, which makes the temperature feel even hotter. Your body's natural way of cooling off, sweating, does not work as efficiently when the air is as muggy as it is. It prevents you from being able to cool down, so you have to get out of the heat. You have to find air conditioning. You have to stay hydrated and drink plenty of water to replenish all of the moisture you're losing through your body sweating, through your skin. And that worst part of the day is expected to be from late morning into the middle of the afternoon. So anytime around 10 or 11 o'clock this morning, that's when we begin to see that triple-digit heat index really taking off. And you can see by 10 in the morning, a 105 in Biloxi, by 1 in the afternoon, a 105 in Wiggins, but a 110 near Gulfport, Biloxi, maybe 112 near Moss Point, Pascagoula. Take a look at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, a 110 near Waveland, Bay St. Louis, and then maybe some improvement towards sunset when those numbers come back down. But that's why you find yourself under one of those hot weather alerts today, whether it's a heat advisory or a heat warning. We're all under at least one of those, and they go into effect in just a couple of hours around 10 or 11 o'clock this morning, and they will finally end around 6 or 7 p.m. this evening. There is that potential for the heat index to climb as high as 110 to 115, especially down along the coast where the air is just a little bit muggier, which makes it feel just a little bit hotter. Similar completely to yesterday. 9 times out of 10, most of us are going to walk out of today completely safe from heat-related illness. But there's always that small percentage of people who might get overwhelmed because they're caught off guard by this. They're not paying as much attention to their body for signs or symptoms of heat-related illness. And those are going to be just that small percentage of people that wind up falling victim to heat exhaustion or heat stroke today, even though the majority of us will just be fine, especially since we're pretty used to this by now. We're pretty battle tested. We know to drink extra water on a day like today. So in honor of that, let me take a few sips. I've got my water on the standby here. Hopefully you do as well. Nice big container of it. And of course, take breaks in the air conditioning and in the shade. Sure, you can be in the sun for a little bit, but try to limit that direct exposure to sunlight as much as possible and just go into the shade as much as you can. It really does help. Remember, the heat index number is only valid in the shade. A lot of people don't know this. We tell you today, oh, heat index 110 to 115. That's assuming you are in the shade. If you are actually in the sun, you take those numbers and you can do a plus 10 to plus 15 to them. So you wind up with the heat index, instead of 110 to 115, you can wind up with a heat index of like 125, maybe to 130 or something like that. we don't really talk a whole lot about that because those numbers just seem really, really extreme and intense. So we assume most people are, using common sense enough to stay out of that direct sunlight. The good news is that we are finding this pattern is going to break. The pattern we have now, that heat dome of high pressure, there's a giant ridge of high pressure just sitting directly over our region. Today it is moving just a little bit to the west of where it was yesterday. And this forecast shows that that heat dome will actually shrink a little bit. The high pressure gets a little bit weaker and it moves off to the west. So that will really help us to fight off some of the intensity of the heat by the time we get to Wednesday, as well as Thursday, that heat dome kind of moving away. And we find ourselves on Wednesday and Thursday in South Mississippi kind of away from that more intense heat that will be developing mainly off to our west or perhaps mainly off to our east. And we're kind of with a break in high pressure over us as we go to Wednesday, Thursday. So that means the temperatures should be able to drop from these extreme levels in the upper 90s to more usual, regular, typical levels in the lower 90s as we head from today into tomorrow and Thursday. Now, this will, of course, unlock the gate for higher rain chances. Those are already starting to increase today. So if you have some plans for Tuesday PM, you already want to have your rain jacket nearby because you might be using it later today when we see some downpours trying to develop. Those highest rain chances don't really kick off until maybe around or after 2 p.m. They're not zero before that, but the highest probability of rain probably holds off until the second half of the afternoon. We're watching some atmospheric moisture situated over here that's going to move in from the north and east around the right side of that high pressure ridge. Remember, high pressure has clockwise wind circulation. So with that clockwise wind circulating around, that's what helps to steer the weather. And it's steering that wet weather over South Carolina and Georgia toward the southwest, toward us. Those are going to be areas anywhere from South Carolina to Georgia to parts of southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and southeastern Louisiana. These are all areas where some of the rain chances are increasing so much that there might be some heavy downpours with some of this that cause some localized street flooding. So this, I remember saying this last week, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time on a day like today. We have to be mindful that there's going to be a potential for dangerous heat. We also have to be mindful that on the same day with a potential for dangerous heat, we could see some localized street flooding from downpours developing later in the day. So the rain chance this morning only around 20%, but then it increases to around 30 or 40% by noon or 1 p.m. And then it increases again to 50% by the time we get to 3 or 4 p.m. and beyond. And anytime it's a really hot day and you have a thunderstorm that's popping up, all of that heat energy gets ingested into that thunderstorm, and that can help the thunderstorm to grow even stronger. And maybe some of these could be intense into the afternoon or evening, where they produce some gusty winds, maybe some frequent lightning, or even produce some, like I said, isolated downpours that lead to street flooding in a few local spots. So putting it all together in our 7-day forecast, as you can see, today probably our final day with this heat wave. As we showed you, the high is expected to weaken and move away from us by tomorrow, and that helps to pull those temperatures down away from the extreme and closer to the norm. This will, of course, lead to a period of time right from late week into the weekend that features kind of near normal temperatures. So if you are already looking ahead to the weekend, which, by the way, will put us into August, so that Saturday, Sunday will be technically the first weekend of August, and you're looking at temperatures that are pretty comfortably normal in the lower 90s and kind of your usual daily pop-up storm chance of about 40% or so. So there will be certainly some rain-free hours each of those days, but kind of giving your classic summer weather for the first weekend of August in the local area. Well, that'll pretty much do it for this Tuesday edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. I hope that you can find a way to stay safe from the extreme heat today, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.